mean, when I found out about this whole winter tour, I was quite pleased by it. Being a passionate baseball fan, I think it's great that the entire organization can move outside of Toronto and use the entire country and build on its fan base. What were your feelings on this whole idea?
I was so happy when I found out about this because having been to Seattle when the Jays are there and seeing the passion and the number of people that would come down to Safeco Field, I knew that if we took the opportunity to come to, whether it's Vancouver or previous to this Calgary and previous to that Kitchener, Waterloo, back in Southern Ontario, that people would really embrace it, and they have. There's probably 1,000 people in line for these Blue Jay players. We went to a mall in Calgary and there were 500 people lined up before we even got there. So there's no question that the Blue Jays, because they're the last remaining major league team, have made quite an impact, and you can see it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you say, the whole thing about Seattle, I've gone down to games even way back in the day in the Kingdome because as a youngster, my first memories of baseball were the 92 Blue Jays, and then obviously, close by to Seattle, the Mariners in the mid-90s when they had Griffey and A-Rod and Buhner and Randy Johnson back in the day. So it was great. But, looking at the organization and the direction they're taking, I'm a big fan of Anthopoulos. I think he's a great young manager. What are your thoughts on the progress he's made in the direction he's taking the organization?
The whole culture has changed around the organization because when J.P. Ricciardi was the general manager, the idea was initially to build the franchise economically, build through the draft. They weren't that successful at it, so then they changed the philosophy, and then it became, well, let's sign over-the-hill free agents, like, with all due respect, Frank Thomas and people like that. Now what Alex is stating is, we're not promising to be ultra competitive this year, but we are promising that eventually we're going to be very good, and we're going to do that by making savvy deals and stockpiling good prospects. They have one of the best minor league systems right now, and you couldn't say that 2 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They have managed to draft enough good young talent that people rave about their system. So, and then now that Vernon Wells has been dealt to the Angels, they have been able to financially free themselves of that contract, which means if they find that they've got a chance this year and they need to spend a little money on a star player at the deadline, they can do that. Or they can sign a big name free agent next year. So they can give Jose Bautista an extension.
Right.
The possibilities right now are seemingly endless.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you bring up a good point. And yesterday, actually, I did a video on my thoughts on the whole trade, and I think it was great to free themselves of that long-term extension of the contract, getting Rivera back, and Napoli, they're only committed to that for 1 year. So.
And this was not a trade about, this had nothing to do with the players that were coming back.
Right.
This whole trade was based on the fact that the Angels were willing to take that contract. So, I mean, you may not even see Juan Rivera play in the Blue Jays uniform, right? He could very well be dealt before spring training begins. Mike Napoli, I suspect, will probably be utilized somehow, and who knows whether that's first base or catcher. So, I mean, you make a great point. It's really about freeing themselves financially.
Yeah, and I mean, just in terms of a guy like Napoli, I was a fan of him because I think he can be a great mentor to someone like JPR and CBF, one of the prospects that I'm a big fan of. You look at a story coming up from the independent leagues there in New York and single A ball all the way to being to win the MVP of the PCL last year.
Yep.
To, that first game was incredible when he had the 7 RBIs and 2 home runs. So how do you find a relationship following baseball in your life when you get a sort of a veteran catcher mentoring a younger guy like on CBO?
I think he will need it. Now, Jose Molina at this point plays that role until it's determined what role Mike Napoli is going to play. Frankly, Napoli is a strong bat, and he can play first base if Adam Lind doesn't work. You've got flexibility now in the roster because for the most part they don't have a DH. So Napoli could be your DH or your first baseman, and then Lind could be in one of those positions too. There's lots of flexibility. My hope is that Aaron Sebia is the opening day catcher, because the way I look at it is, if he is truly the catcher of the future, let's start the future now. Let's not keep waiting until next year or the year after. If he's going to be the guy that you think could help form a championship team, let's find out if he's capable of doing it. Let's get him those reps right now.
Now, speaking of the whole championship thing, it's always going to be the debate, how can the Blue Jays compete in a division where you have the Yankees and the Red Sox spending $200 million every year, and then we see what the Rays have done the last number of years with the talent they have coming through the system. Do you think that it's feasible for the Blue Jays to realistically compete with those teams and eventually get back to the playoffs?
Absolutely, I do. But that doesn't mean it's going to be this year. We have to wait and see what Kyle Drabek is going to be like as a major leaguer, because we don't know. We have to wait and see, can Aaron Hill come back to the form he showed 2 years ago? Can Adam Lynn do that? Is Jose Bautista a legitimate power threat, or was 54 home runs a fluke? I don't think it was. I know Jose quite well. He's the real deal. He's figured things out. There are so many things to learn about this organization, and not to mention the fact there's so much backup down in the minor leagues right now. If someone falters, there is talent down there that can be fostered. So, are they going to compete this year? Possibly. Boston's incredibly strong. The Red Sox have gotten better and better, and they're, it's another year of maturity for guys like John Lester and Clay Buchholz, and now you throw Adrian Gonzalez into the roster, and now you put Carl Crawford in left field. It's going to be tough.